Okay, update on the 2006 Arctic Cat 650 H1 limited edition I guess because it's got the black plastic. Got her all put back together again. Sorry in advance I did not have pictures and videos of me completing this project simply because I didn't have a second pair of hands, but anyways, got her all back together. Celebratory libation here. Yeah. All right. Here's what happened. On the last video, as you guys know, I was getting coolant in the oil, and I was very upset with how in the hell that had happened. Good news, pulled the plug. There was no coolant getting in that way, and these ATVs are not known to blow heads, you know, or head gaskets. And this engine and design can be found in this particular vehicle, the regular old 650 H1, you know, green plastic or whatever, and then of course the TRV and the utility vehicle. And this problem also can happen on the 500, so I'll identify what happened, what I had to fix, and then how to prevent it. As far as what happened here, what it ended up being after doing some research on the forums and talking with a couple of people who've had similar situations happen on their machine, as far as the coolant in the oil, it was the water pump. This is what the water pump looks like on this machine. It sits underneath that piece right down there. Again, sorry, I got it all put back together, but it sits in there like this, okay? And it's the lowest point of the engine. So what had happened is when the machine had overheated, and I'll identify what caused that. The seal here, this is on the inside of the engine. The seal in the shaft there failed, and since it's the lowest point of the engine, it allowed all the coolant to drain out of the coolant system and into the engine. I know that on the bottom of this, and I reused it on the new one, there's a little bolt here that's supposed to weep if the water pump is failing. Either I didn't see it, or I wasn't noticing any weeping there. But there we go. I had all the coolant went into the engine oil. Called up the local Cat dealer, not the one that I had the problems with, mind you. I called up another one, told them what I was looking for. They sent me the whole new assembly. It comes complete, with the new gasket, new everything. It's those 1-2 bolts right there. A little tap. Don't pry the thing off. Just tap, tap, tap. Broke the O-ring seal there. She popped right off. You may have to adjust the pump a little bit because the shaft right there has got a little indent on it. Slide the new one in, tighten the screws down, and I believe it's like 8 to 10 foot-pounds or something like that. I didn't have an inch-pound torque wrench, and then it's just the simple process of filling the coolant back up and getting the old muddy oil out of the engine. How I did that is I went and actually went to the local Walmart, got about 3 Fram oil filters because they're cheap. They're like $4. Don't get the good stuff when you're just doing an engine flush, and a gallon or so of Pennzoil synthetic. Synthetic was in this. Some different type of synthetic. The only difference is the additives, whatnot, but it was going to be fine for the purposes here. Now, if you have contaminated oil, when you are first flushing it out, don't change out the oil with good oil and then fire it up and put any load under the engine whatsoever. Fire it up, bring it to an idle. About 30-40 seconds is more than enough. Shut her down, and just enough to circulate that good oil back through the engine, and then drain it, pull out the oil filter, rinse and repeat that process about 2 or 3 times is what it took me until I stopped seeing chocolate milk coming out of the oil drain. Did it one more time for good measure. Then of course I put the Cat OEM oil filter on, refilled it with I believe it's 4 1/4 quarts of the AMSOIL 10W40, and fired it up, got it a good operating temperature, shut her down, came back out. She's cooled down a bit, and there's no contamination, so all's well. I believe 100% that the synthetic fluids that I put in this machine save the engine, because oil and water resist themselves, but the the nature of the synthetic fluids, bonding to the metal components inside there. Once I got it all back together, I wasn't hearing any rod knock, any vibrations, any of that stuff. So I'm just going to keep going. And it's that stuff's expensive. It's like $12 a quart almost, but it's 100% worth it. I mean, to replace an engine, one of these things is about as expensive as replacing one in a car, with the labor, and I mean, if it's $2-3 grand or what have you in a machine that's this old, I know a new one would cost me about $9 grand, so I guess I would have been replacing an engine, but still, not something that I would have been looking forward to. So here's where I believe, after some figuring and some discussing, where the original point of failure, because it wasn't just one thing that failed. It wasn't just the water pump. It wasn't just the fan switch. It was a cascade of events that led to this. And fortunately, because a little bit of common sense and paying attention to my machine, I saved it from a catastrophic failure. The original point of failure on this machine was the fan diode. Now, if you go to a dealer and you're like, fan diode, they're gonna, unless they've specifically dealt with this issue before, the person's going to look at you like a cow would look at an oncoming train. Like, what? What are you talking about? Fan diode? It's in the fuse box under the seat. No, it's not. It's actually right. You pull off this piece of plastic right here. Of course, you got to take the seat off. You don't have to take this off right here, but this piece right here comes off. About right here, there is a wiring harness that runs from back in here, and it runs along and runs up here, and it goes to your lights and goes to your fan, and then it runs up here, goes into your switches and stuff. Okay, now it's approximately in this area. Okay, and you can feel it. You feel the wiring harness, and it's in a shrink wrap. It feels like a green pea. It's about that size. So you cut the shrink wrap back, and be careful when you do that. Don't get overzealous with it, because there's other wires in there. You don't want to cut them. It'd be a bad day, or there's just, more you'd have to splice. You open that up, and it's a fan diode. It's just a small little ceramic coated diode. You cut that out. You replace it with a nice piece of heavy gauge wire. I believe it was like a 10, maybe a 12. A couple of crimp connectors. Fired it back up for good measure. The fan kicked on. Hot damn, I'm back in business. I put Humpty Dumpty back together. Because what that thing's mission in life is this DC motor fan. I guess if you're going down the trail and it's freewheeling, it can create a little bit of current. If that current back feeds into the electrical system, it can damage the computer and cause some haywire, I guess. Arctic Cat says that's why it's in there. That's why it's in there. Okay, I guess it looks good on paper. If you want to replace it, it's like a $4 part from Arctic Cat. Or you can go to the electronics store and buy it. I simply just bypassed it. Okay, your machine, you can do what you want. I just cut the damn thing out. I'm not going down the trail at 70 miles an hour in this thing. Okay, it plows snow, it hauls wood, and drags a DR brush mower behind it. Other than, takes my little girl for a ride. Other than that, it is what it is. Okay, I don't go through a mud hole or anything crazy, so I'll be just fine without it. Okay, once you get that out of there. Okay, what happens is when that thing fails, and if it hasn't failed in your machine, it will. Okay. Everybody I've talked to that's had this specific problems, it's only a matter of time. Okay, if that thing fails, what'll happen is it'll do, the fan won't come on, and the little gauge will be flickering, you'll overheat, all that good stuff. Okay, the bike's not truly overheating per se. What is happening is when the thermal switch for the fan, which sits right here, okay, that's brand new. I replaced, the dealership replaced that for me, but that wasn't the problem. But it sits right there. And that's also the temperature sensor for the bike. When it says that it exceeds 190 degrees or something like that, it commands voltage to go to the fan motor and turn the fan on. Well, if that one-way diode is shot, then no voltage can go through. So the computer's saying turn the fan on, and no power is just going to the fan. Okay, and it won't tell you that there's a fault there. No check engine light or anything crazy comes on. So it's a very simple, circuit. It's direct power too. Plus the couple, relays and checks and balances to the fan. So what happened was that diode failed. So then the fan didn't come on, and because the fan didn't come on, the engine overheated. When the engine overheated, it took out the seal in the water pump. When the seal in the water pump failed, when they shut the bike off, all the coolant drained down into the engine. And if I hadn't been paying attention, or not looking at my gauges, or did a little bit of thinking of what's going on here. Anyways, if I would have just kept running it, that coolant contamination in the oil displaces the lubrication of the oil, it would have cost me an engine. Okay, and then I still would have had the damn problem with the overheating. I still would have had the problem with the coolant leak. Although, and because I have not had to replace an engine, I do not know if they come fully dressed from Arctic Cat, meaning the recoils on there, the water pumps in, any of that stuff. I don't know. Fortunately, I hope I never have to find out. But it would have cost me an engine. Okay, guys. So when if you get done riding, you park the thing in the shed, you get back on it, you fire it up, and off you go again. Well, it's Russian roulette. It's no different than your family car. If you don't pay attention to your fluids, eventually it's just gonna fail. And the neighbor's home. So check your fluids, okay, and spend the extra $1.50 and put the synthetics in there. Again, that gave me definitely a second chance here. And if anything happens to the contrary, again, I will update. And I cannot stress enough that the forums help me out, a lot. Okay, because I was completely uncharted waters here. As I've stated before, I am not an electrician. And gears and moving parts, I can get through that. But if the parts are there and it obviously doesn't look broken and the shit doesn't work, I'm lost. Okay, and this project was. On a 1 to 10 difficulty scale, I would say probably a 4, simply because of the tight constraints. Okay, you got to take some parts off. To get at this, you got to take off the floorboard, you got to take off that side panel, the seat obviously has got to come off, and you got to take this fender liner out in order to be able to get at the water pump. Okay, just because of the, I've never taken those things off, so all the bolts were nice and tight, and I got, these big old mud scratchers. It was just hard, and I don't have an ATV jack, so I'm doing it on, sitting on my ass on the ground here. It was just tough for me personally to get my hands in there. I suppose if I would have had a second pair of hands holding the light, an ATV jack to get it, up, at least waist high or something like that, so it wasn't all hunched over, it would have been okay. But just some regular hand tools, a couple of sockets, and of course your fluids when you're done. And it was about, start to finish, maybe a 2.5 hour project, maybe closer to 3. But I got it all put back together again. And now the only other thing I got to make sure to fix before winter comes, I'm getting a little bit of leakage out of the left side as you're facing it here. So this side here, I got some gear oil coming out of the seal at the rear differential, so I get to tackle that next. If anybody ever has any issues on these machines, the forums are really your best bet, because this particular machine now is getting on 10 years old. And I'm not saying all dealers, but it's kind of against their best interest to fix these things. I mean, any dealership, whether it's a motorcycle dealership, an ATV dealership, or a car dealership, it's not in their interest to fix these. They're really not in the business of repairing stuff. I mean, they're in the process. Their modus operandi is to get you through warranty. That's a whole different thing. And then once they get you out of warranty, then they're going to get you for every dollar. So depending on the dealership that you're dealing with, you may have people who are helpful. You may have people that are not helpful. The first dealership was definitely not helpful. The second group of guys, and I will post a link to their website here in the description, was extremely helpful. They were very professional. They dealt with this before. They sent me the parts I needed and even told me what it was going to take and how hard it was going to be, and assured me everything would be all right, which was very, very good to hear, because I was thinking, worst case scenario, I'm going to need to do a head gasket, I'm going to need to do this and that and the other, and it was going to cost me a boatload of money. Did not happen to be the case, so I was very happy there. Anybody has any specific questions, post them in the comment section below. I'll answer them promptly. Thanks for watching.